Gentleman's time has expired. At this time, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Idaho, Mr. Simpson, for 5 minutes. Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Down there. It's good to be here, and thank you for inviting those of us that don't sit on the committee to attend today. This has been a subject that, as being chairman of the Interior Appropriations Committee, that I've been interested in for a number of years. And since we've talked about it a little bit, and people have talked about the appropriation and stuff, let me say that in our House Interior Appropriation Bill we provided significant increases in funding and direction to support the efforts to combat the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous people. Law enforcement programs within BIA are funded at $775 million, which is an increase of $205 million, which is about a 26% increase in this year alone. This increase supports additional $142 million for criminal investigations, police services, and an additional $17 million for law enforcement special initiatives, with a total of $33 million specifically for missing and murdered Indigenous women initiative. Within criminal investigations and police services, the bill includes $5 million to support the application of forensic genealogy as an investigative tool to identify missing and murdered individuals through Operation Spirit Return. These are some significant increases that we've done. Are they enough? I don't know. We held a hearing on this last year. It was one of the more important hearings I think that we've heard. In fact, this may be the most important committee hearing that this committee has. When I tell people that we lose 6,000 murdered and missing Indigenous people every year, they're shocked. That's twice as many as we lost on 9/11. And we do that every year. But yet the general public doesn't know that. And we're really good talking about how shocked we are about all this. But we need more than talk. We need actions. We need to solve this problem. And while I know that it's important that we identify those cold cases and try to identify those and bring some answers to the relatives and so forth, I want to stop it from happening somehow. And one of the things that I found after our hearings that we held in our committee, it's not just a money issue. It's almost more a jurisdictional issue than it is anything else. And it's very complicated. I understand a lot of Indian issues. I've been studying them for a long, long time. And when you get to the area of law enforcement, it gets so complicated. As an example, in a non-PL 280 state, if the offender is Indian, the victim is Indian, and the crime is a major crime, the federal government and tribal government split jurisdiction. However, if a non-major crime is committed and under the same scenario, it's solely a tribal jurisdiction. And I can tell you some stories of people that I've talked to that have told me their stories, that it is completely jurisdictional. And somehow this is beyond the appropriations process. This is something that needs to be done either through this committee or the Judiciary Committee to address this issue. But this should not be this damn complicated. And somehow we've got to change that. So what can we do to make this more simple so that we address this issue instead of quit talking about it?
Well, thank you for that question. And the biggest thing that we can do is make sure that there is no gaps in jurisdiction. And that's right now we're doing that through cross-deputization agreements and making sure everyone's at the table. If you don't have everyone at the table that has jurisdiction or thinks they have jurisdiction so everyone knows what their part is, then you're going to have something that's going to fall through a hole. I can use an example that recently where we found some remains on a reservation, and they had such a good working relationship, which is how it's supposed to work. We had the tribe, we had the federal government, we had the state examiner's office, we had everybody out on that crime scene working hand in hand, investigating that crime, because everyone may have a piece in it at some point because they didn't know if the victim was native, non-native, or the suspect was native or non-native. So everybody worked together to make sure that there was no jurisdictional gaps. That's how it's supposed to work. But we still have issues in many places in the country where, somebody don't want somebody because they don't want them in their jurisdiction. They don't understand jurisdiction, and we have to bridge those gaps. And I think
I don't understand all this jurisdiction stuff. If I find some remains and they're on the reservation, why aren't the tribes in charge of it?
Yeah, and that's
Why
normally
don't they
how
do
it works.
because they have the capabilities and the ability, and we ought to trust them to do the damn job. And instead, it is just cross-jurisdictional, and whose jurisdiction is it, and all that kind of stuff. And it's just too damn complicated. Sorry for the language, but it is too damn complicated. And it needs to. We need to simplify it somehow. And I don't have the answer to do that. But it's like I don't understand for the life of me why Native Americans aren't, and all tribes aren't, in the Amber Alert system automatically. They're people just like us.
Absolutely.
So I don't know why it's an issue that we're doing, but we have to deal with it. So it is confusing. I appreciate the job you do. It is a very, very difficult job. But this is something that we need to quit talking about and start finding solutions and start enacting those solutions. And if it requires more money to do these things, I'm more than willing, as you know. And we do this in the Interior Committee. For all of you that might not know, this is probably the most bipartisan issue that we deal with in the Interior Appropriations Committee. Both Republicans and Democrats are interested in this. So I appreciate you inviting me to be here today and to participate in this, because it is an important issue, not only for this country, but it's important personally too.
Indeed it is. Thank you very much, Representative Simpson. At this time, the chair recognizes the gentleman from the state of New Mexico, Ms. Stansberry, for 5 minutes. Ms. Stansberry.
Thank you. And actually, I want to thank the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Subcommittee, because your leadership in making sure that our tribal communities and BIA is properly funded has been really vital, especially over the last several years. So we appreciate the work that you're doing to make sure our tribes are whole, especially in a time when, unfortunately, the administration has continuously proposed to slash funding. And I think we can't have this conversation without noting that the administration has proposed to cut BIA's funding by 27%. And that includes a 2% funding cut to justice services. But it's also important to understand that tribes get a lot of their money to do this work we're talking about today through the Department of Justice. And the Office of Justice Programs at DOJ, which provides the vast majority of grants to both tribes for doing law enforcement as well as for survivor and victim services, is cut by 22.7% in this budget. 22%. VAWA, which was game-changing for our communities, there's cuts to funding for tribes, cuts for victim services, cuts to housing to help people who are escaping domestic violence. And so what I find so difficult about this conversation is that I know, Mr. Addington, I read your bio. You have dedicated your life to law enforcement. Thank you for your service. Thank you for stepping up to lead in this moment. But how can we sit around this dais and say this is a bipartisan issue when we have an administration who is threatening to cut these programs by almost a quarter across the board? If you turn around and look behind you, this room is filled with people who work in this space, predominantly women. Because behind every single statistic that we're talking about here today is a sister, a mother, a daughter, a person who's missing. These are real people. These are people from our communities. Last year, there were almost 10,000 people reported to the FBI as missing in indigenous communities, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. We don't know who was not reported. And there is no credible evidence that it is getting any better. The statistics do not say that it is getting any better. And so, I have to ask you, Mr. Addington, I know you're here to talk about your work, your passion. I know this is something you care about. But it's not working. And this administration is threatening to cut funding for the programs we do know that work. And in New Mexico, I can tell you, because of DOJ, because of the executive orders for cutting funding, most of our victim services programs, because they serve indigenous people and because they serve diverse populations, actually had their funding frozen. Victim services money never went out to our NGOs. This administration is actually trying to bankrupt a lot of those NGOs right now. And so I have to ask you, do you think it's working? Do you think that this administration's approach to this is working?
Well, thank you for the question. I can only speak to what I am responsible for, which is a law enforcement piece, and we are prioritizing the resources that we have. And I don't know if you heard earlier, but we are actually putting money out to the tribes now that hasn't went out before. So we're actually putting more money out to the tribes where they can put more boots on the ground to be a part of these. So we are definitely making it work at our programs, and we have to make it better. That's what we're here to do. And, we always look to make things better. I don't think, like I say earlier, any law enforcement program can ever say that they can't make things better. We can, and we've got to, and that takes a collaborative effort between all of us. So we're here to work with this committee and anyone, the grassroots folks out in the field, to do what we can do to make it better, and that's what I'm committed to doing.
Thank you, and I'm not trying to take it out on you. I know you're a career civil servant that's done this work your whole life, but I do want to make the point. And I can tell you, the tribes in New Mexico that come and visit with me every day, it's not getting better. It's not okay. Things are not okay on the ground, including in law enforcement. Between DOJ, between people retiring, it was already hard to recruit people into BIA law enforcement. Between the cuts at DOJ to law enforcement funding, it is not okay out there. And if the president's cuts to BIA go through, you're going to have tribal governments that are going to have to reallocate operational funding away from law enforcement. So I ask you in your leadership role to take this back to the administration and to really fight for our communities, because it has to change.
The gentleman's time has expired. This time the chair recognizes the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Westerman, for 5 minutes. Mr. Westerman.
Thank you, Chairman Hurd, and Mr. Addington, thank you again for being here. Thank you for the exceptional work that you're doing. And I would like to give you an opportunity to explain more about changes that have been made and how more money is getting out to where it needs to be, where the right personnel are being employed, and how you are making a difference. Because my understanding is that things are happening, that the statistics show that you are making a difference. And just because something's been done some way for a long time doesn't mean that it was being done correctly. So can you elaborate on that?
Well, thank you for that question. And like I said earlier, we can always do things better. We're always looking at ways to streamline processes, and we're looking at resources. These different technology tools and things that we're bringing in is helping us use less resources to do things that we normally would have done in the past. One of the things we're doing in the missing and murdered space is we're looking at the missing and murdered unit, and where do we have agents located? Why do we have them there? Are they being effective where they're at? I mean, we're looking at the holistic approach of everything that we're doing, and we're making changes. That hasn't been done over the last few years, so we're doing that now. We're actually taking performance metrics in our law enforcement offices as a whole, and if we're not performing, we're making changes. You all may not see that here at your level, but we are making positive changes in some of our offices where we've had maybe some not so much in the performance areas. We're making those changes to make it better, and it's going to take some time to see those results, because we're talking, years and years of things that we're trying to change. And, the staffing resources, like I say, it's not just at BIA, it's every agency across the nation in public safety. We've got to get more people on the ground to make those effective changes, and we're doing that as well. We're doing every kind of incentive that we can do at our hard-to-fill duty locations. We're offering bonuses. We're doing anything we can do to do that. We're looking at the housing that officers are having to live in. We're trying everything we can to do that, but it's going to take some time for us to get there. But we are making those changes to make sure that our programs are being more productive and we're getting results. So I think you're going to start seeing some results in some of these as we move forward with some of these pretty progressive changes.
Well, it's encouraging to know that you're working smarter. It's encouraging to know, as Chairman Simpson said, the Appropriations Committee is looking at this issue more closely. And when we talk about working smarter, I know you said in your testimony, talking about AI-powered tools, you said they, quote, help investigators organize large volumes of case information, identify patterns, prioritize leads, and review investigative materials more efficiently, end quote. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more and talk maybe some specific examples how AI has helped and what you see for the future of employing not only AI technology but other technologies to work smarter and to get better results?
You bet. Well, thank you for that question. I'll just give you an example. I was just probably 2 months ago, I was sitting across the table from the secretary, and he asked the specific question about if we're using AI to work on the missing and murdered initiative. And we got to talking about, the things that we were doing. And he looked back at his chief information officer and said, get with them and get them the tools they need to do A, B, C, D. And they immediately assigned someone to us to start working with these AI analytical tools to gather up all the missing and murdered data out of our reporting system. And right now they're going through these large volumes of data to actually separate it and analyze it to see if there's any things that can pop out to give leads on these cases, or things that had maybe missed by investigators that's inside of these reports. So they're actually utilizing these tools right now to take all that man hours that we would have an analyst to sit and go through these reports over and over. And we still miss things as human error can happen. These analytical tools can give you a wealth of information and things that you might not.
Are you able to share that data across different enforcement agencies? And can you briefly describe how the cooperation with other agencies is going?
Yes, so we working hand in hand with the other federal agencies as well. So we're working with the FBI because they get a lot of the missing and murdered reports as well. So if they're working a cold case instead of the BIA, we have to work hand in hand with them to make sure we're sharing that data back and forth. So we're working with them to do that, and it's going very well as we share information. But I think using these analytical data AI systems is also going to help us, get these cases moving forward that's been sitting stagnant for a long period of time, because a case agent trying to go through and do an investigative plan on these cases can use AI to actually help do those and get something done much quicker. So we can go through a lot more data in a lot shorter period of time and start getting some of these cases off the books.
Thank you again. My time's expired, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman's time has indeed expired. At this time, the chair recognizes the gentlewoman from the state of Arizona, Ms. Grijalva, for 5 minutes. Ms. Grijalva.
Thank you, Chairman Hurd. And thank you all for being here. And thank you, Chairman Simpson, for your contribution to the hearing. I agreed with everything that you said. For Arizona, this is a very deeply personal issue. My district is home to 4 federally recognized tribal nations, and indigenous families have lived with the devastating reality of missing and murdered indigenous people for far too long. Too many families know what it means to search for a loved one without answers, to navigate overlapping jurisdictions with delayed justice, and to feel abandoned by systems that should have protected them. This crisis did not happen by accident. It is rooted in generations of underinvestment in public safety, failures to uphold tribal sovereignty, and policies that have left tribal communities without the resources they deserve. I was a county supervisor before coming here, and we worked with Indivisible Tohono, the city of Tucson, Pima County, trying to come up with solutions. But the problem really has to do with these incredible roadblocks that are fixes, I believe, only the federal government can really provide. So addressing MMIP, the crisis has to be more than promises. And this is one of the fullest hearing rooms that I've seen since I've been here in Congress. And it shows how critically important this issue is. And we have to invest in tribal law enforcement, victim services, data sharing, cultural informed prevention efforts, while ensuring that tribal nations remain full partners in every decision that affects our communities. So the Bureau of Indian Affairs 2024 Tribal Law and Order Act the report estimated that the total public safety and justice need for Indian country in 2021 was $3.5 billion, with $1.7 billion for law enforcement alone. And within your testimony, you stated that the department's budget reflects a commitment to improving public safety and addressing violent crime throughout Indian country, yet your request only included $560 million for public safety and justice programs, a decrease of $9.7 million from the prior fiscal year. So given the IA's own assessment of need and the ongoing MMIP crisis, how do you acknowledge the budget request submitted to the department does not meet, can you acknowledge that, does not meet the actual public safety needs in Indian country?
Well, thank you for that question. And we are trying to take in all of our resources and make sure that we're meeting the needs the best we can with what we are provided. So we're looking at ways of streamlining our resources and working smarter with what we have.
Yeah, I think a $9.7 million decrease from the previous year, that's just a lack of resources. So I'd like to note that Arizona is one of the few public law 280 states creating unique jurisdictional landscape where state, tribal, and federal responsibilities interact. While PL 280 expands certain state jurisdiction, it does not diminish tribal sovereignty or federal trust responsibility. That makes sustained federal investment in tribal law enforcement, courts, and victim services all the more important, particularly as we address MMIP. So how is the Department of Interior ensuring that tribal nations in Arizona receive equitable funding and technical support for their justice systems and law enforcement despite the unique jurisdictional challenges of PL 280?
Well, thank you for that question. And we work very closely with the tribes in Arizona and trying to partner with them to make sure that we are sharing resources and providing them any additional resources that we have available to them. Just kind of like I talked about with the missing and murdered funding, we're going to make sure that tribes in Arizona are receiving some of that funding to help them work on these specific issues as well.
Are there additional steps the department is taking to address any remaining resource gaps that those communities face?
We're always talking with the tribal leadership about resources and where there's an ability for us to provide something to fill a gap. So we do provide also at the end of the year, we provide funding to those tribes to try to fill any resource gaps when we have it available as well.
Okay. The Not Invisible Act Commission found that development projects such as extractive industries that bring outside workers on established man camps are significant contributors to missing and murdered Indigenous peoples and human trafficking near tribal communities. What is the department doing to protect tribal communities as it accelerates energy development on federal lands?
So we're doing a couple different things. So we actually have a unit that monitors those man camps to make sure if there's human trafficking investigations or things that's going on there. They do operations at those, and we also just started a new predatory crime unit that's actually monitoring all the social media and the different websites where a lot of these folks will actually reach out and try to contact people to lure young women into these camps. We're actually working cases in multiple states, including yours right now. So we're doing that as well. So it's just starting to get more and more. As
my time's expired, I would love to see specific details of what that looks like, because I have to say from Arizona's perspective, we don't see it. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. At this time, the chair recognizes the gentleman from the state of Washington, Mr. Newhouse, for 5 minutes. Mr. Newhouse.
We'll go with that, Mr. Washington. Thank you, Chairman Hurd. Also, Chairman Gosar and Westerman and all the members of the committee for allowing me to wave on to the panel today. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to shed more light on this very important and troubling issue that we're seeing across the country, and also to continue my advocacy for more awareness and more resources dedicated to this issue. You know, I truly am, after working on this issue for a long time, very heartened to see the room full of people, not only interested persons, but also members of Congress, not just the committee members either, but there's been a lot of non-committee members that have come to be part of this today. So that's that's a good sign that we're gaining a lot of interest and urgency around this issue. Mr. Addington, you said you're in charge of law enforcement on Indian reservations. I'll take that literally. Very interested in getting some of your thoughts on an issue that's been brought up. I think Ms. Randall brought it up and others. But we've been working very hard on the Parity for Tribal Law Enforcement Act. Certainly has, I think it would be a great step forward, trying to get it through some of the hurdles that we have in Congress. But I'd like to get your thoughts on it, perhaps specifically on that, but also more broadly. If you could address where we are on recruitment and retention of law enforcement officers on tribal law enforcement agencies. You know, it's one thing to have the resources available and the tools and all the AI and all the great stuff that are absolutely necessary. But when it comes down to it, we got to have people. We got to have manpower. We've got to have the somebody to put into place and use those tools and resources that we're trying to provide and fund, not only to address the cases, but as has been mentioned, to try to prevent this from happening in the first place. So could you kind of give me your thoughts and tell the committee where you think we are and where we need to go?
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for that question. So as I've stated earlier, recruitment and retention in not only tribal law enforcement, but all law enforcement and public safety right now is just very, very disheartening, because no one wants to get into public safety anymore. With some of the events that's went on over the last many years, it's very hard to talk someone to come into law enforcement. We go out and try to do recruitment events at colleges and different locations and try to talk, people into coming over to public safety, and we just don't get as many people that's interested in it. And we talk to the tribal programs as well, and they're running into the same problem. And then when they do get someone hired on, if someone's paying more down the road, they get trained, they go down the road to that agency. Well, then they're down there for a little while, then something happens, and then they get a better job at some other agency, and then they go to that agency. So the pool is very limited, and I think that's the biggest factor in not getting public safety people on board across the board, is no one's interested in getting into the field anymore. And then for us at the BIA, it's the process is very difficult. The background process takes a long period of time to get somebody on. And if you don't have a job and you're waiting to come on, you can't wait that long to come on. So you're starting to look for something else, and then you go get a job somewhere else and you're not interested anymore. So there's a whole bunch of different factors that factors into that. And I think we just have to do more to try to get people interested into the law enforcement field, because there's not the interest anymore. We used to, when we would get a certificate, which is the list we get that's got people that's interested in jobs, that used to have multiple people on it. Now you're lucky if you get one or two. It's very disheartening, but I don't know what more we can do other than promote the public safety field, because it is a very important field, and all these people sitting behind me that's victims, families, or victims themselves deserve us to make sure that we've got that public safety staff on board to make sure they're getting answers to those families. So we're doing all we can at the Interior to try to do that. We're pulling out every stop that we can. I see other agencies offering all kinds of bonuses, and they're still not getting that many people on. So we just got to do more and try to get people interested in public safety.
No, I appreciate that perspective, and certainly I would take that, if I could, as an endorsement, at least of theory of support for the Parity for Tribal Law Enforcement Act, which we're working on very hard, and hope to get that in place soon. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the 5 minutes, but also being waived on with the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newhouse. Your time has expired. At this time, the chair recognizes the gentlewoman from the state of Wyoming, Ms. Hageman, for 5 minutes. Ms. Hageman.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to wave on to this committee. It's good to be back. Thank you, Mr. Addington, for being here and providing such valuable information. The missing and murdered Indigenous person crisis is not new and something that tribal communities like the Wind River Indian Reservation in Wyoming have been dealing with for decades. Getting a handle on this crisis involves overcoming significant hurdles in the execution of federal laws in coordination with our tribal, state, and local partners, but new challenges have arisen. The Natural Resources Committee has conducted extensive oversight into the surge of drug and violent crime on tribal reservations because of the Biden border crisis. Mr. Addington, what has the fallout of an open border been on tribal communities, and does this make it more difficult to address longstanding issues like MMIP when thinking about resource allocation and priorities?
Well, thank you for that question. And I think, the drug aspect of the missing and murdered cases that we see a lot of drug activity in some of those cases. And I think, most of the drugs coming into the United States is coming from out of country. So we don't have drugs made in the United States like we used to have before all the precursor laws and things went into effect. So, allowing, the drugs to come into the country and not being able to stop all of that from getting to our communities has been devastating, and it does lend to not only the missing and murdered initiative, but all the violent crime that's going on throughout the nation. A lot of our violent crime is tied to some type of substance abuse, whether it be drug, alcohol, or whatever. So we have to do more to make sure that we're keeping that, the fentanyl, the meth, and all the different things out of our communities, so we don't, enhance those violent crimes and missing person cases by having that out there. So our Division of Drug Enforcement is working very diligently with the tribes to make sure that we're running operations to try to disrupt those drug trafficking organizations from bringing that into our communities. And we're doing a lot of great work doing that, but we can't stop it all. We have to be partners with our states, our locals, our other federal partners to make sure that we're being effective.
We've had a couple of hearings on this particular issue, the impact of the open borders on our tribal communities. And the tribal members that have come and testified have stated that the open borders and the ready access for the cartels and things to tribal members has been absolutely devastating to their communities. I understand that the FBI is specifically working on that particular issue to try to address it, which I welcome that, and I appreciate your understanding of the issue as well. In this hearing today, we are examining how new technologies can assist in addressing these public safety concerns. But Mr. Addington, have criminal actors become more sophisticated in their tactics and the use of technology to prey on our tribal communities?
Absolutely. Just one example is our predatory crime unit that we just established under the secretarial order. Just talking to our agents that run that unit, it is absolutely amazing of the stuff that they tell us that these criminals are doing out there with technology right now.
Could you give us some examples, please?
So like luring young girls into either meeting with them or into some type of sex acts. I can't go into details about specific cases, but they're using all kinds of technology to try to send different things to them, try to groom them, try to lure them in to end up meeting with them. They're using all these apps that it's very difficult for law enforcement to try to catch them. So some of the messages and things don't stay very long and they go away. So we have to use better technology or better ways to catch them before they can meet up with those people and harm them.
So what is the Office of Justice Programs doing to respond to these evolving threats, and what can Congress do to support these efforts?
I think, we're doing as much as we can by starting these different programs and advancing our technology. That's the biggest things we can do. Just like in the missing murdered side of the house, our DNA technology that we're utilizing right now has been a game changer for us to make sure we're working on these cases. And same thing with our AI analytical tools. We just don't have the people that can sit there for hours because we have so many cases to analyze. If we're using these AI tools, it's helping us shrink that time frame down. So I think giving us the support to make sure that we can utilize those tools is paramount for us.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here and taking this issue as seriously as it warrants. Thank you for your caring for our tribal communities. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Addington, I want to thank you for your testimony and also my colleagues for their questions. At this time, I would ask the clerk to reset the witness table for our second panel.
Thank you all.